Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ongoing Mastery Presenting and Speaking, the podcast and the interview. And today we have Meridith Grundei. And Meridith is an amazing speaker, an amazing trainer. She's just got all the skills. How are you today?
I'm good. I love that intro. Thank you. You're very kind.
So, what would you like people to know about you and your work?
That's a great question. I love it. Well, when you work with me, you have a lot of fun because sometimes we have to take off the serious and put it on the shelf for a little bit and have some fun and exploration and play. And yes, we can get serious, and some of the topics that we work with and that you're working with and the message that you're delivering can be serious, but we have to find that lightness as well. I had a mentor once that said, not too tight, not too loose. And I love
Mm,
that's my philosophy, not too tight, not too loose. So
I like
uh,
it.
that's what it's like when you work with me. And I'll leave it at that because I'm sure that other juicy things will come out of this conversation.
All right. So, would you say that you're a speaker coach or like how do you title yourself?
I lead with I'm a public speaking coach, and I work with a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs who are looking to expand their brand by getting on more stages, speaking more here virtually. Maybe it's learning how to speak more clearly or concisely on podcasts or getting on camera for social media. I help people in all of those arenas. I have started to get on more stages myself. I have a performance background. I love being on a stage. And so I have started to develop my own signature talks. I've spoken a few times this year already
Great.
for other organizations about how to be more confident speakers.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so, those of you who are listening and those of you who are watching this on YouTube, now you know why I invited her on because, yeah, we both agree on exactly the same stuff. It's like it's performance. You need to think about all the things. And in this case specifically, I wanted you to come on because we're in a group together and we're in a lot
Mhm.
of related circles, but you work with people on improv. And I
Mhm.
really, really want people to know more about how that comes in. So, can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yes, I would love to. So, I have a group coaching program called Confidently Speaking. It is a weekly improv workout for speakers. And it also gives you the opportunity to practice in front of an audience, which is the group, the members themselves, because we all know that things change when you get your content in front of an audience for the very first time. And so, why not have a dress rehearsal before you get on the big stage and so that you can figure out how to make those adjustments? So, the improv piece is I used to be a teacher at the Second City. I went through IO Chicago training. I've performed improv. I'm presently in a group still called Playback Theater West, where we take stories from the audience members and we play them back. And I love the different forms of improvisation. I also have improv training in movement theater and improv, all the stuff. And I love it. And I pull it all together. And I do these weekly workshops, these workouts for my members because what happens is they start to build their confidence because I'm giving them games, I'm giving them structures to be able to work with each other in a non judgmental, safe space where they can fail, learn, adjust, do it again, and grow. And it's been fantastic. And I have one member in particular who's been in the group for 2.5 years now. And she went from barely being able to open her mouth, tons of self judgment. The mind trash was there. And now I can't, she's like unstoppable. It is incredible. Like and it's because she wants to grow too. You have to come in with the right mindset. And
Yeah.
she came in with the right mindset and she got uncomfortable. She got messy. And now she's released a book. She's done a 20-minute launch talk for her book. She's been on almost 100 podcasts now. She's all over the place. She's doing reels on the Instagram. It's very impressive.
I'm so thrilled because this is exactly the work that it lights you up, it lights me up. It's like, yes, that's the thing. And
Yes.
people who have been following this podcast for a while know that I started taking improv classes because I don't have that background. I have it, I built it up over time, but
Hmm.
not formally. And I really want to get formally more trained in it. And so that's why it was like, oh, you have improv. Come on, please, please,
Yes.
please. Yes. All the
Yes,
things.
and
Yes. And so let me ask you this. Do you find, what is the limitation that people have to get over about learning that failure is actually part of success?
well, I repeat the question again because that
Okay.
was a good question, but I want to make sure I answer it right.
So I believe, and I think you believe, that failure is part of success. In improv, you have
Yeah.
to roll with whatever happens. You have to fail, you have to try again, all of that. What is it that people need to get over? What are the struggles that you see people when they come in and failure means failure to them instead of failure is a step on the path to success? How do you get them
I
there?
I get them there by doing the exercise. Let's just, for example, like yesterday, we played with one word at a time story, which is where you build a story one word at a time. And it's especially tricky on Zoom. There's a lot of things that are actually gifts that Zoom and improv provide. Uh, but what happens is you notice that because failure, the fear of failure is so real, that even in a very simple exercise where you're building a story with a group of people, one word at a time, there's certain things that happen to our bodies and our response to that. One is the self talk, the judgment. The second thing is that we're holding our breath. It's like it's as if I'm holding, and by holding, and what I mean by that is you're still breathing, obviously, but you're holding, like your muscles are holding, you're holding the chest. It's, and you can feel it even in a Zoom room. I can see it physically. People's facial expressions start to change because they're like, they've got the funny face of like the fear of death on them.
Yeah.
So it's about getting people to notice that this is their physiological response to the anticipation of failure.
Nice.
And then once you show them like, you're okay, you're still alive, you gave me a word, you added to it, we're all good, let's now do it again. And I want everyone to just notice, like, this time have a warmth to your face, relax,
Yep.
breathe,
Yep.
you're going to be okay, we're doing this together. And then you just keep doing it again and again and again. And then you start to see people they start to find the fun, they start to find the playfulness. And then you can re-emphasize the importance of showing up, building the muscle,
Mm-hmm.
practicing, doing the reps.
Yeah.
And I always debrief at the end of these exercises and ask, okay, so I want you to talk to me about, what did you notice about yourself? And then how do you see this applicable in a real world situation? And it's really cool because, and people will make those connections where, like, wow, I had a lot of fear of not doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
You go, okay, well, did you do okay? Did everyone think that she did it wrong? And everyone shakes their heads. Nope.
Yep.
I wouldn't have noticed. Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's amazing. I noticed exactly what you're describing when I went into Boston and I did, a session with Kelly, and I dragged her and she was gracious about it because she was like, I do not want to do this, but I will do it with you. I'm like, thank you. And then she was great. She was amazing. But I was like, okay, no problem. I've been doing this forever, right? I'll rock this.
Yeah.
And then I noticed the reactions in my body and I'm like, huh, I wouldn't have called that. Like I kind of assumed that I would just be completely at ease and I wasn't. And it was really helpful to me to kind of feel that again because I always feel
Mm.
nervous before I perform or present. Always. I always have in 25 years. I just have that, but I use it as butterflies. I use that as
Yeah.
energy. So I don't
Yeah.
try to get rid of it for me. I just kind of channel it. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
used to making my butterflies fly in formation,
Yes.
and this was more like that chaotic feeling. And I'm like, oh, and then I was my normal kind of outgoing self. And one of the people who was there, we're tossing, we're doing the toss it to a person. basically
Yeah.
toss the ball, right? And I
Yeah.
tossed it to her, and I tossed it to her like 2 or 3 times in a row, and she got mad at me because she felt like I was putting her on the spot. And so I took her aside after and I said, "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." She goes, "No, it's fine. This is hard." And I'm like, "You're right. This is hard." Yeah.
It is.
But her first reaction was like, was stop that. And I'm like, okay. Because she just, the edginess of someone could call on me any second. And the
Yeah.
immediacy of having to respond was very threatening. And it was super helpful for me to not only experience that, but also to see how primal it is for people. Because I know
Mm-hmm.
that, but the stuff that I do is a lot more is usually by the time they're in group, we've already
Mm-hmm.
done a bunch of stuff privately.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little less of that immediacy. So this was
Mm-hmm.
super, super helpful. One of
Mm-hmm.
the other things I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to just do the looking off the side here to look at my notes. So everybody on, looking at YouTube can laugh at me. Yes. Okay. Building credibility. I mean, I I know the answer to this because it's what we both do for a living. How
Right.
does public speaking help you build credibility, Meredith?
How does it not? Well, so I work with a lot of people in technical fields. And when I
Mhm.
say technical, I'm talking about people in technology, people in medical fields, finance. And oftentimes they need to deliver presentations to customers. And those customers need to understand what the heck it is that they're talking about and how it's going to solve their problem. And oftentimes what happens in these technical industries is when you're presenting, you get so stuck in all the little tiny details because they, yes, are important and they are important to you. And it's important in regards to how it was built or whatever the financial plan is, whatever the topic.
Yeah.
However, those details are not as important to the customer. The customer just needs to know how you're going to solve their problem. And they need you to share that information with them in a way that they're going to be able to remember it so they can take that information and share it again. So if you get too caught up in the weeds, it's very difficult. And so I always say, don't give them the whole enchilada. You always want your audience you want to leave them wanting more. And by getting more clear and more concise as speakers and becoming more clear about your messaging, you build credibility. You become the go-to person. The people in leadership start to notice you. They want to put you on more stages. It's only going to benefit you and your career if you can be a more succinct, concise storyteller, not just a presenter, but even in data, even in science, even in finance, we need to be storytellers. Your whole presentation is a story. So that is my spiel about credibility.
Yes. I I actually so I was doing a webinar yesterday and it was on building engagement and online presenting.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I said was, I don't want you to worry about being a bad presenter because the only way you're going to be a bad
Mm.
presenter is if you care about your content more than you care about your audience.
Yes.
And people were like,
Yes.
"Oh, okay." And I'm like, "That's how you're a bad presenter. Everything else is just inexperienced. That's it. You're just
Yeah.
inexperienced. You haven't practiced enough." But the only bad presenters are the people who hold on to their content to the point of like, "No, my content is God and you will come and worship at the shrine of my content." And it's like, it just makes me crazy. So what I mean, how do you get people away from that? Because I know that's a thing for you too with your clients. So how do you help people unplug from that?
You have to get them to understand the why. It's important. I break it down to people by saying, look, research has been done. Even Aristotle spoke about how you need to have these equal parts, right? You need to have the empathy, you need to have the authenticity, you need to have the logic. Otherwise, you are going to lose your audience. We are human beings who emotionally connect to messages. And if there's nothing emotional and nothing to connect to, then you've just wasted your time and you've wasted their time. So I always try to get people to look at their presentations from a bird's eye point of view and ask the question, am I bringing my real self to the table? Or
Mm.
am I or am I being a person that I think the audience wants to see, which is never going to be helpful to you?
Yep.
The second piece is there that emotional connect, which is the storytelling, which is the case studies. If you're not allowed to bring in, a lot of my clients have compliant information that they can't
Yeah.
change anything. So then what's the case study? How can you humanize this a little bit better for us? And then there's the logic piece, which most presenters in these technical fields come in with 99% logic and then none of the other stuff. And so my job is to get them to equal those things out. And the Aristotle is that pathos, ethos, and logos piece, which is
Mm-hmm.
the art of persuasive storytelling. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, you and I both work with tech clients. Mine tend to
Mm-hmm.
be in security, and what I find interesting is when we work on pulling their passion out of their subject matter expert, their little SME universe,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
have them share that. And it's really interesting because, at least in my case, I found people who wouldn't consider themselves a passionate presenter. And yet, when I start getting them on some of these things and say, but what about this? They're like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, there's passion right there.
There's some
That's it.
passion there.
There's some passion.
Yes.
And it's interesting. I don't, where do you think people have learned that with presenting, they're supposed to read the content and be holding still and be sitting there and I am going to be present? Like, where do they learn this garbage? Do you think they
It's
learn
been
it in
modeled.
school?
I think it's a combination of things, but I feel that it's just been someone started it. Whoever you are, we
Yeah.
need to have a talk. You're probably
Yeah.
dead by now. But somebody started it and then it just got modeled again and again and again. Leadership. Even I go to some of these general sessions. I work a lot too with the medical community,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll go to these speaker training events where I'm a very small component. I teach the Up on Your Feet workshop component to it, but I'll watch the general sessions, and here are the top leaders in their fields who are
Yep.
literally thinking out loud on stage. That's all they're doing. And so if that's what's being modeled on a regular basis, then of course that's what people are going to think that is expected of them, and they're not going to do anything more to set themselves to stand out from the masses. And so
Mm-hmm.
what it takes is for people to take that risk, be bold, and do things differently. That's also what builds credibility, is by not doing everything the same way you just saw it done
Mm.
again and again.
Yeah. And that's, I
So
mean,
that's
it feels risky, but
yes.
it's actually not. It's actually not that risky. It just feels risky.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I will say though, this younger generation coming in, everyone's talking about like the Gen Zs and
Mm-hmm.
it's no longer the millennials. I gotta say, I got to coach a bunch of people, one person after the next. The Gen Zs, they would always come in and I'd be like, I would perk up
Mm-hmm.
because it's like they haven't been witnessing it long enough to know any better. And they stood out.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that I coached stood out. And it was it was like, oh, thank you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I find that online, um, it's a lot easier with people who have grown up with kind of, engaging with technology so that looking at the camera as a person is less alien
Yeah.
to some people than to others.
Yep.
And it's not,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
it's an experience thing, right? But
Yep.
in person, what do you do to help in-person folks transition to an online space? Because the skill sets are similar, but they're not the same. How do you help them do that?
Yeah, well, it's really getting them to understand how to show up on these virtual platforms by having them reflect on what they've seen already, because a lot of us obviously have sat here on Zoom calls again and again and again because of the pandemic. So just asking questions first, like, what do you notice when you get into a meeting, uh, energy wise? Who are the people that you're attracted to looking at the most, right? So then getting them to kind of think through it and then say, okay, oh, they had great lighting. they were centered to camera. They were looking at the camera
Yeah.
when they were speaking, and not at the screen. So these are things that are challenging to do at first, and they feel funny. But when you start doing them more and more, and you look at that camera, like you just said, as a person,
Yep.
it starts to become easier. Also, people with staged backgrounds. And I also say everyone has an opinion, and everyone's opinion is different than the other person's opinion. But it really, like if you have a virtual background with your brand on it or whatnot, just make sure you're not ghosting out as you're speaking, or there's
Yep.
no distractions, uh, simple things like that. And then when we present virtually, it is important that we are speaking to one person. And that's something that I learned early on as a commercial actor. When I was looking direct to camera, I wasn't looking at a bunch of people sitting on their couches watching the commercial. I had to think about one specific person, whether that be my best friend or my husband or my mom, whomever, but it was a person that I knew with a name, with a problem that I was going to solve, a product that was going to solve their problem. That's who I was talking to. And then I say that's the same thing for you in a virtual presentation. Pick that one client that you're speaking to. Who's in your audience? It's the person with the least amount of knowledge, because you want everybody in that room to feel like they've gained something from your presentation. You don't want to leave anybody out.
Yep.
And so that's just a mindset. So I say, get a picture of them, put it next to your camera. If you don't have a picture of them, get a Post-it note, put an arrow on it, pointing to the camera to remind you that that's who you're talking to.
Yep. Awesome. I am
Yeah.
cracking up because I literally had a slide in the conference I just came back from, which had a line that said, "Everybody needs a Phil," because Phil was my best friend in college, and he is the person that I picture when I am going into a webinar, because it's always, I want to talk to him. Oh, I haven't seen him in forever. And it's always that. And then I start. And so I'm like, everybody needs a Phil. And I have actually shared this multiple times, but I need to tag him on this because I really want to see him be embarrassed, and that'll be fun for me. So
shout out to Phil.
Shout out to Phil. Phil Mayers.
Phil Mayers.
Phil
Hi,
Mayers.
It's nice to meet you.
Hi, Phil. Yes. He's going to be like, ugh, Kirsten. Yeah. So how can people, well, actually one last, before we go to how can people find you, what one piece of advice about ongoing mastery in work or in life, what one piece of advice would you like to share with people that you think that they should take away?
Mine, it's always lead with curiosity. Constantly be leading with curiosity. And that because I feel that knowledge is power, and that we always have room to grow, always. And that's just something I value, is education and growth and curiosity. So I say, if you keep leading with a healthy dose of curiosity, then the world is going to be a better place.
Awesome. Where do people find you?
That's it.
That's
you can
perfect.
find me in a couple of places. Yeah, you can find me at grundeicoaching.com. You can find me on TikTok. I have a pretty robust community there. At Grundei Coaching is my handle, and then also on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I think I said Grundy before, so it's Grundei. I'm sorry. I said it wrong. So let me be clear.
It's really okay. My husband warned me when I took his name that was going to happen all the time, and I just kind of go, okay.
Fair.
It's good. It's all good.
Fair. Yeah, I get Rourke when people call. I get Rourke, and I'm like, really?
You do, Rourke?
Rourke?
I can be Grundy and you can be Rourke.
There we go. The Grundy and the Rourke show. Perfect. I love it.
The Rourke and Grundy show.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like it. Yeah.
I love it.
Flip it. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was fantastic. And everybody, please make comments in the socials. Please tag. Please share. And we will see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.